Good afternoon, everyone. It's already 1 month into 2026, so high time to kick off another round of Open Mic Next in Health sessions. We are back and we are ready to talk about what matters in health tech and beyond. Tonight's topic is multi-omics technologies, and I'm very much looking forward to an insightful discussion on the topic. My name is Rael. I am very happy to host this event for Switzerland Innovation Park Basel area. We provide the ideal workspace for health tech ventures, small health tech ventures here on the Novartis campus. With me on stage, as always, Ursula Costa, director at Day One and mastermind behind the series. Ursula, over to you.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody on site and online. Thanks for joining us from a lot of places all over the globe. So today we are going to have an insightful event and I see many familiar faces, but for those of you that don't know us yet, I'm the director of Day One. We are a non-for-profit here based in Basel and we provide support to early stage ventures that enable pharma R&D, like from drug discovery to omics to AI and tech in clinical development. We try to cover the full spectrum. Today, we are very glad of being here with Rahel, with Novartis, to host this event. For me, it's especially exciting because we see the progress. I was checking this morning, and it's only 1.5 years ago that we were here on a stage discussing about single-omics, right? And in 1.5 years, the world has already changed and we are ready to talk about multi-omics today. So I'm really, really excited to hear from the panel and to learn a lot about the topic. During the panel, you can ask questions, both people in the room, people online. You can scan this QR code that you see here and ask questions anytime. Our moderator will take them at the end of the panel. And we are very aware there are always questions that can't be answered on time. Bear in mind, we have several hundred registrations online, plus the people here, so we might not be able to cover all. But for those of you that are here on site, after the panel, there's an apéro, the discussion continues. You still can get your questions answered. And today, there's even more. So for those on site, you can get to see, and I don't see where they are sitting right now, but we have one of the companies, a SIB resident, so here at Novartis campus, a skylight, pioneering and really advancing the field on single-cell omics. They are here in the room. You can find them during the apéro. They are on the back. I didn't see you. You can get to them, get to talk, engage. This is just an example of one of the companies that is here on campus that keeps pushing the boundaries. AIMT Analytics, we hope they make it on time, and you can also meet them at the apéro. They welcome Deutsche Bahn might be a little bit late, but we hope they make it on time so you can talk to them. And without more ado, I'm just gonna welcome the panelists. And please let me welcome, without killing myself, let me welcome Ella Degani, Elodie Prunier, Abdullah Karaman, and Christian Klein. Thank you very, very much for being with us here today.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. There are a few seats in front that are still empty, if you would like to come closer. Thanks for joining us for the open mic, and I'm going to have a quick room snapshot. We have around 100 people in the room, half from Novartis and Roche, so our pharma colleagues are very much here. We have one person from in silico medicine, that I don't know who that is, plus a smaller but important group from academia and health tech. Today we will keep this focus on oncology because all the panelists' work is in and around the oncology world. First, with a panel introduction, we have Elodie. Elodie is a VP of Biomedical Discovery Oaking, and she leads the biomedical discovery, working with data scientists and AI engineers to build models that support target identification and early drug development in oncology. A theme you'll hear from her is translational realism. Multi-omics can be powerful, but clinical feasibility and trust set the pace. She also brings a personal stake. She was faced with breast cancer at the age of 35, which was a work-life collision. We will touch on that later. Next, we have Professor Abdullah Kahraman, a professor from the Fachhochschule Northwest. He is a bioinformatician and cancer genomics, focusing on splicing and isoforms as biomarkers and potential targets with a strong applied angle through tumor board support. He is also a founding member of NAPO, a Swiss flagship aimed at building a secure, federated infrastructures for AI-enabled oncology and medicine. And finally, we have Dr. Christian. He is the Global Head of Oncology and Data Science at Novartis. And he looks after R&D full value chain, from early discovery through biomarkers and later stage clinical trial AI. His perspective is pragmatic. AI only matters if it improves decisions in real drug development. And he's very clear on partner red flags, especially black box answer machines that don't understand drug development rigor. So let's take a look at the market and start there. We are past the AI awareness phase. We are now talking about real work that is happening in pharma, startup, and in academia. In Silico Medicine published phase 2A trial results for a generative AI. So this is beyond just the talk and nice science. We have Isomorphic Labs, which is launching its first clinical trials later this year. And from the pharma side, AstraZeneca to acquire Modella AI to embed foundation models and agents into oncology R&D. Novo Nordisk appointing its first chief AI officer, Anioleth Zimmer, and also partnering with NVIDIA on the way that they are thinking about drug discovery. On that context, I want to start with something simple but very important. What's value? We can look at AI in oncology as the discovery acceleration, trial optimization, biomarker refinement, or even just operational efficiency. So with that, Christian, I'm going to come to you first. From a pharma oncology lens, where does multi-omics and AI create measurable value right now, today?
Right. So thank you for the kind introduction and introducing me to my red flags right away. So I think if you look at our entire chain, and as you mentioned, we have visibility, although we're not the exclusive parties across the entire chain applying genomics, multi-omics, and AI in oncology research. I think there are a couple of spaces where you can already clearly see almost routine use, but also increased value that you get. So let me start very early on. When you think about target identification, we're also past the early genomics phase, right? That's been mined, that a lot of stuff has been done in that space. And you can see now that also as an organization, we try to combine and try to integrate multiple different sources of information, not just in preclinical models, but also in real world data and patient data, really to get to a point where we can see opportunities for new targets. We also are faced with this massive crowding problem in oncology, where everyone works on the same handful of targets. So I think the key to unlock these kind of targets is to gather the right data, but also to really then have a follow-up ready, which is the validation part. So I think multi-omics-wise, we integrate all these sources and we can get tangible value from it. But because it's so early, right, it still depends on the entire downstream chain to actually work. So we're not just thinking about the multi-omics in a vacuum. It's really connected to a validation effort that makes sense, but then also a drug development process that connects to that, and you will get more complex targets out of these approaches. So that brings me to the drug development phase, where as we do drug development, right, we see the collection of certain types of data much more routinely, whether it's proteomics, single-cell genomics, transcriptomics. simply to iterate and to optimize our molecules. As you may be aware, for example, modern biologics are no longer simple monoclonal antibodies. They are, complex molecules, tetravalent in some cases, trispecific, quad-specific. So there are many, many different ways in which you can engineer these, and to have a good sense of what you want to optimize towards, you need a functional readout, not just whether it binds something or not. So in many cases, that functional readout is actually something you can measure in the omics space. Now, if you go even further down the development trajectory, I think what we currently see is that there is a huge amount of real-world data being collected, and that data no longer just consists of bulk RNA sequencing, right? There's a lot of other data out there. We collect a lot of data, longitudinal data in our trials, and that really helps us understand the patient population in much more detail, which then allows us to design trials in a way that is much more effective. And I think those, whether that's supported by AI or still classic data science approaches, but integrating multiple different sources of this complex data has really helped either to define patient populations, where we want to go, where we want to expand, match modality to the right patients, but also then again go back and set criteria on our next generation medicines at what bar to meet, what kind of patient population they will encounter, and how to best serve the unmet medical need that's out there. So, long story.
Very good, thank you very much. And on that, I want to switch to you, Elodie. From a startup building decisions, what do you define as value? When do you say there's a real impact, or it's just nice science?
Well, I guess we face the same metrics, but indeed, to me, one thing that is still striking to us, and where I see a boundary that needs to be unlocked, is we have worked a lot with pharma company on the biomarker ID space. And that's where, to me, the reality of the AI and the confrontation to real world needs to happen. Is we build up really amazing multi-omic AI-based biomarker identification using patient data. So everything on paper that makes sense. But then obviously you go to a clinician, you're like, so to select your population of patient that is of interest, you're going to have spatial data, you're going to have clinical, you're going to have proteomic, you're going to have to, and the list is long and long and long and long. And you have 200 features of AI. And then the clinician is like, yes, but that's not going to be relevant, and it's not how we're going to design the trial. So to me, it's the reality that I'm facing a lot on my daily life, being like, yes, science is amazing. But then when you go to the trials, you're like, yeah, I'm coming a bit short. But I agree, I think this is a question of time, meaning that in the end of the day, we're forcing more and more the AI to be interpretable and having really picking what is really important and what really matters for the clinician and their decision making. So I'm pretty positive that this, plus the technology that are getting better, and now you can have a lot of omics with few materials from the patient, that actually the two worlds will meet quite soon.
So actually, following on that, what is your reduction strategy when the clinicians cannot go through all of those? What do you say, yes, this is the main part, rest, secondary? How do you go there?
So that's where I think a lot of the discussion between the experts, so biologists like me or clinician, and the AI and the data scientist team is really important, is to really give weight or influence the features of importance and really select the one that, okay, AI says it's the most important one, but if it's something that is not clinically relevant, you can reshape the AI to say, okay, please give me what is actually clinically relevant. And I'm not saying it's easy, because it's a lot of research on the AI field itself to make the model explainable and being able to change the weights without forcing too much the AI to be like a human, because that's also not what you want. So finding the good level of, okay, you have new doors of features and seeing the world through the AI eyes, and you're still relevant for clinician. Mm-hmm. Finding the right balance, to me, it's really where AI is coming, and I think the every month I see an improvement. So I'm pretty convinced that it's going to accelerate more and more.
So I'm going to actually go to Abdullah. And so this was on the value side. The next topic going to be on the hype. So if you want to send your questions, I will have the tablet to incorporate them. So Abdullah, on that note, professors, different working groups coming up every month with a new predictive model. And they look at different ways of variance. And they look at 23 or 13. How do you define value when you're thinking about which model you should be using?
I mean, so my work is very much, so although, I do research and I also do basic research, but we always try to do it in a clinical setting. So we work very closely with hospitals and so on. So for us, value generation would really require that it has some impact in the clinical decisions. If you, there are a lot of things, that you can predict and so on and so forth, but to make it really clinically relevant, is something totally different. And especially here, one thing that one needs to always consider is what type of data clinicians have actually available, so that you can use them in your AI models and so on. And unfortunately, in oncology especially, when you look at molecular evidence, it remains to be mostly DNA sequencing. And then also not whole genome sequencing also. It's really like very targeted, just sequence a couple of genes and so on, sometimes up to 300. But that's basically it. So I think there is still a long road towards using an AI to help to improve clinical decisions. We have seen especially like with image with image processing, image analysis, and so on, with the digital pathologies and analyzing H&E slides and so on. There like it works quite well, but nevertheless it's still not in the routine now at hospitals. And I can talk here about the University Hospital in Basel, for example, or the Swiss hospitals. So, and actually this is something where we are totally aware of this, and that's also the reason why we then established or started this NIPO project, because in the NIPO project, that's exactly what we will try to do. So that we will really try to integrate AI technologies so that clinical decision makings become possible, or at least to a certain extent are eased, and so that clinicians can really obtain this support from these AI models. But now, just right now, today, this is not there yet. So, and that's the reason. For me, yeah. The value would be really coming back to your question. So the value is really, does the AI model really help to decide the best therapy for a patient? And then you have to test it, obviously, and if it really helps and supports the decision making, and if it really makes a difference, whether you use AI or not, and the difference is obviously positive and not negative, then that would be the ideal value that an AI model can generate.
Yeah, just on this, I think it's a huge bias here, because it's something that I'm pushing internally in my company. So obviously I'm going for my own interest, but to me it's exactly where I see a lot of people going, and I think it's the right direction, is a lot having more AI models where actually you replace the spatial omics or all of the multi-omics from the H&E slide. So you can predict, for example, spatial or proteomic expression from the H&E slide, because then by design you're going to help the decision making and fasten the decision making. Not saying it's there yet, but the direction that I think it's important to go.
Yes. So actually on that note, let's go to, you mentioned the validations part of the work. So multi-omics is a new, machine learning is a new, what is new is the scale and the compute. So I wanted to ask you, how are you defining your validations? At what point you would say, no, we are not going to move forward, versus no, this is something that we are going to put our money on?
So I think you can see validation across the chain, right? So you have the early start. And I think it'd be nice to connect with what was said here, right? When you do clinical trial design, you also have to limit yourself in terms of what you can get, right? And you have a little bit more freedom to be innovative. because you control a trial, but then it still needs to attach to clinical reality. And I think we also look for opportunities, especially with data that is readily available. But we think beyond multi-omics, right? If you think about clinical imaging, or when you think about radioligand therapy, dosimetry, etc. But then in that space, validation happens actually in the early trials. So you'd have to find, will in the organization to try something new, because for many cases, the preclinical modeling goes only so far. So at a certain point, if you want to predict expression, for example, of a biomarker from either an H&E, or you want to predict response from imaging combined with ctDNA and circulating protein, for example, you have to then eventually actually do something in the trial to match that. And that's the difficult discussion, because there's always incentives that you have to work with, right? So a clinical trial team or a physician wants the best thing for the trial to get to patients most rapidly, and generally that still is the low barrier way of going into a classical trial and completing it as soon as you can. But that discussion is actively happening internally, and I think there's a lot of people in clinical trial design that are open to innovation, and I think that can then percolate down into clinical practice. But we are also realistic that will take a lot of time, because setting up such infrastructure and comfort with those approaches will take a long time. If we can talk about validation in the early stage, maybe you want to go somewhere else.
No, thank you so much. That's perfect, because I'm going to go to Elodie from the startup lens that you're working with pharma. Where do you see the hype running ahead of the reality? Because there's one thing that is happening inside, you see it from the outside.
But I think it's where indeed validation is key, and I see where, so either we go really late into the external control arm and indeed helping the trial design, and then obviously here I see a lot of people asking for a lot of validation, which makes a lot of sense. But then obviously you're facing the regulatory as well, because when we come with the AI approach on saying, oh, we're going to change your trial and we're going to do an external control arm, then it's really hard, because you need to get that one pharma that is going to accept to be going with you for the design of the trial and going all the way there, because I understand it's really risky and it's also costly. So you need to find that one partner. But indeed, the validation is reachable in a sense, because, okay, once you have done this pharma partner that can go with you, then you will have an automatic validation through the trial, right? Again, not saying it's easy, but at least you have a deadline on by when is going to be your approach being validated. Me, I think on the early and discovery side of things, same, people are telling me, oh, your approach is going to be validated when you're going to go in clinical trials. And I'm like, yes, it's going to be in 10 years from now. So if I have to wait for my approach to go into clinical trial and validate in clinical trial, then I have a problem, because it means you're going to only have my approach validated in 10 years from now. And I see that a lot of things being what we see on the hype of the AI versus the metric and the validation of the AI. Obviously, I think right now people are still waiting for the huge hype of AI into target ID and validation. One, because indeed the task is not easy. Finding new target by design is hard. And second is, obviously, if you have to wait for the AI drug or AI target to be identified to reach the clinical trial, then by design, I started 7 years ago working in AI, and I haven't reached the trial yet, because it's the pipeline development that takes a lot of time. So indeed, to me, when it's a difficulty in terms of full validation that we're facing.
And we are even talking about known unknowns. We haven't even got to unknown. We know that the protein folding problem have been large by AI, Abdullah. So when is the time for multi-omics to leverage it to identify the unknown? Are we there yet?
The unknown, I mean, this is, that's the most, I mean, when do you realize that you know now the unknown? I mean, this is very hard. I mean, we will know later, basically, when we have discovered these unknowns. It's really hard. I mean, I can just, we could do some, I mean, you can predict the unknowns for sure, but then the question is, yeah, so we have to definitely, do some validation. But I know, for example, from AlphaFold, that was very interesting. There was a study here from University in Basel where they used AlphaFold to predict all the structures of the entire proteome or the protein landscape and so on. And they were able to discover new folds with AlphaFold that have not been observed, and this is kind of an unknown. So we didn't know actually that these folds existed, and now they were predicted. But the question now is, so now we know the unknown. Basically, it used to be unknown. We know, but then it's again validation is here very key. You have to validate in order to to confirm that you have indeed discovered something unknown that was earlier unknown basically. So yeah, absolutely, I think that is really very crucial, the validation aspects, and especially AI is still a model, and it's and I mean, I have hard time, for example, when we do computational work and we try to publish it, we always get them from the reviewer the question, have you validated it? And they always suggest an experiment. So, I mean, but this is a fact. I mean, it's they are all computational models, and we need to do validation in order to be really sure, experimental validation, to be really sure that the predictions and the models are, the results that are produced by these models are actually correct.
Perfect. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, well, I think especially, so we talked a lot about the clinical phase, right, where I think that validation is exceptionally hard, but I think if you think about the early space, and especially when we talk to startups and people who have a cool new technology or a new idea for targets, right, and we can collaborate on that, I think people have to realize that the scale of target identification is there, and I think we can certainly pull in lots of data and do that exercise, but then we also need to scale the downstream, because that is something that people sometimes either not think about or really underestimate, is that if we don't invest in, say, the high throughput downstream, right? And that means setting up standardized assays, lots of automation, lab in the loop, kind of AI models that help optimization of molecules. If you don't have that, then you can identify as many targets as you want, but you're bottlenecked by that, one scientist and 3 RAs that are trying to actually validate your target. And that can take years, because these things are not easy. So thinking about the entire chain is important. I think that is something that are super active discussions that happen all over, not just here, and I think that's crucial. But that requires a mindset shift also in the way we do drug discovery.
Yes.
And I think if you want to see value maximized, right, without the hype, you'd have to have that downstream too, because otherwise, any target is still only as good as the model that produced it.
Exactly.
And it's very hard to say how good that really is.
Exactly. So thank you so much for bridging to my next topic, which was data reality. So yes, we are constrained in oncology of what we sample, when we sample, and how biased our historical data is. So part of it is, as we're collecting, going to the clinical trials, let's just gather better information and better data on that side. But going to your legacy data sets, do you think any is salvageable? Is there any of them could be used for AI to rethink the ways that we were working in the past?
Yeah. So I think, say something controversial, right? I think every company I've been at or spoken to has said we're sitting on a gold mine. There's also gold in a landfill, right? So you can imagine that it depends, I think. But to answer your question directly, right? I think there is a huge value in legacy data, and I think Novartis has done an excellent job with their Data42 platform to really enable a lot of the trial data to be used, reused, but also used across assets, across disease areas. And that took a huge amount of effort to get into the place where it is right now, and it's not even, reached its full potential, I think. However, all legacy data to me is not always in scope. I think you have to really think about data collected in an unbiased way, in a way that matters to the prediction that you're trying to make with your AI model, right? So And the fact of the matter is, I've been part of some of these archaeological expeditions into data history, and a lot of the old data is collected in a biased way because people already know what they're looking for, and they're obviously biasing towards, so you have way more data on good molecules than on bad molecules, for example. You have way more data on biology that's successful versus biology that's not successful. So if you were to train a model just asking what is a good target, you'd be able to find 20 excellent targets because they went all the way to clinical development. They have only very sparse data on the other parts. So it is my firm opinion that we need to enable legacy data where it's irrelevant, but also generate data prospectively for AI models themselves in order to get the right value out of it.
Absolutely. And with that, Abdullah, I want to just go to you on this side. How do we stop more data turning into more fake, bogus relationships? Where do we say, is it noise or is it signal? Easy question.
I mean, so coming back to the earlier question, it's all about validation. So, we have to validate. I mean, when these are predictions, and especially, in a hospital setting, when it's, when the decision on a therapy is, is supposed to be done, and there's there's patient life, basically, being affected, we have to validate. There's no other means, basically. So, and this is what we have to do. So when we apply these AI technologies, especially in a clinical setting, we have to do, clinical trials and so random clinical trials, to really test these algorithms and to see to what extent they can really, benefit the decision. So I think this is kind of the only way how, in a clinical setting at least. In a research setting, it's different. In a research setting, you have more flexibility and so on, because you're not deciding on the life of someone. But in a clinical setting, this is very different. And I think, again, we have to validate using, double-blinded, random, clinical trials and so on.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the adoption and tools, given that Okin as a startup provides these tools. Trust isn't a philosophy. It's not something that you can just say, trust me and my tools is going to be working. You want on a Monday morning when you're busy setting up your work to go and use your tool. So when it comes to that, how do you build your tools that your own biologist would be like, yep, this is going to help me be faster, quicker, better?
I think the trust is the key here, and indeed, so that's what I ask my team every day: is how, because obviously, if my team don't trust the tool we developed, then how can anyone else do it? So I see it as a Lego. Maybe it's because I have a 5-year-old daughter, so maybe that. To me, it's really building the blocks of, okay, I'm a biologist, even to trust myself, or to trust a student, or to trust a data scientist, or to trust somebody on my decision making, which is not life-saving because I'm a biologist, so I know if I make mistake, it's okay. I try not to, but it's not the same stress, right? And so indeed, what we do is always thinking what does it take us to trust the model, to be sure that we are going to be comfortable selling them the tools. So obviously it depends on the tools and what the tools is doing, but we always have, first we use it for our own pipeline, we develop our own drugs, like that. It's, if you're happy about what you do internally, you have example to give to people and say, I trust it for my own pipeline, so it means it's valuable in a sense. And second, we indeed do a lot of what we call a human in the loop. So meaning that we're the best customer internally, and if we're unhappy, the people that are developing the tools, they understand why we're unhappy and where is the trust coming from. And so we're always pushing into the interpretability, which I guess is also what we've touched upon earlier on, like, okay, we really want to understand it's behind the box. Like, I can tell you last week I had a philosophical question, because right now you have agentic approach where it's basically your chat box. And for me, it's really a philosophical question as a researcher, because you can force the AI model to tell you a reasoning. You can tell me, please give me your reasoning. But it doesn't reason as a human. So it is going to answer you by a human reasoning that you are forcing him to tell you a reasoning that he doesn't have. And so to me, it's philosophical. You're like, okay, do I really want the AI to have the same reasoning as me? Or do I accept that somebody else has another reasoning? So indeed, the trust is really hard even for us to touch upon it when it comes to, do I want the AI to give me the exact reasoning that I want, even if it's not the true reasoning that was used for the prediction.
Absolutely. So I'm going to move on to the partnership and trust, because I think that's going to come into that.
Oh, yeah.
That partnership is not the question of should we partner, is that will you survive the drug discovery partnering with us? So Christian, when does a capability of a partner becomes core and should get internalized?
Yeah, I think you have all these stages of technology and maturity, right, that you work with, and I think for a big company like Novartis, we have the flexibility of working with a lot of partners to really pressure test new technologies, new engagements. And I think if you look at our history of partnerships in this space, you'll see that we engage with a lot of partners in the field and really allow those partnerships to thrive in the sense that we are open and we collaborate on whatever the partnership is about, but it also gives us an opportunity to evaluate whether or not a new or approach goes forward. I think as a successful basis, there should be a measurable outcome. There should be something that is really clearly stated that we're trying to achieve, and there should be openness in the way of working in the sense that we understand. And I think that can allow a partnership to go on for a long time. But I think as technologies mature, we've seen this with, a lot of the single-omics data, for example, or other things. At a certain point, it becomes such a core capability. Now, in a hypothetical scenario, for example, say that doing chemistry in the future is purely an AI thing, right? You don't screen large compound libraries anymore. You just, you dock virtually. You have models that predict properties, and then in the end, you immediately get 10 candidates that have high affinity and good developability, right? ADME properties. That sounds like a capability that we would need internally, right? That's something that you really need to engage with. And I think there is multiple ways of assessing whether or not that is at that stage, but I think we look at it in that space. Now, if you're a smaller company, you cannot always have that flexibility. You have to pick and choose where you think, something is really key to your core business, and you need to internalize that or partner very deeply, or just not do it, because I think this is also a world with all these, where the hype and the impact is sometimes difficult. You can also partner very broadly and be left with nothing, right? So I think that's, it's a difficult space there, and really the key question is this core to what I'm doing? And if so, then you need to certainly pay attention, because I've seen, AI-driven approaches that are way outperform classic ways of working. No.
That is true. So, Elodie, on that side, from your side, what do you need from pharma for a partnership to work? What is it? Is it data access? Is it clear line of accountability and governance? Is it something else?
All of what you said, I think, is a good beginning. And to me, I've seen a lot the partnering with pharma change in the last years. Because when I joined the company, so like 7 years ago, obviously AI was really at the beginning. And we encountered a lot of discussion with pharma companies that if we didn't have a bit of data scientists and people that understand a bit the AI language from the start, it was really hard, because even if I was here to translate a bit between the two words, it was really hard for the people to be convinced. Indeed, like, am I going for something that doesn't exist in 6 months from now, versus am I investing in something that is real and will actually change my ways of working? This has shifted over the years, because one, I guess, indeed, there has been more and more company beyond, so people understood that, okay, we need to get past the hype and see what is actually being impactful for the drug development and the pharma space. So they acquired more capabilities internally, which then for us became a different switch. Like, then you change completely how you talk to people, because then it's more, okay, what is the brick that I can bring to your already well-shaped pharma company that is going to be impactful? So indeed, in the end of the partnership, you're going to be like, okay, it was a success. It was a partnership that led to a success. And I think it's, even for us, which we've been here for 10 years, I think one difficulty for the pharma clients that we see, and I understand for them, is also the fact that right now the AI tools are changing every 6 months. Exactly. And so what do you do?
Yes.
Do you keep the pace internally? Like, I think especially on the AI drug design, even me, I'm blown away. Every 3 months I'm like, oh, and I'm outdated to what I know on the AI drug design. So I think it's really hard, I mean, even for us to keep up. But so I can't even imagine for a big pharma company, how is it you can't invest internally to keep up on, like, every 6 months. The AI approaches that are going to do the drug design are going to be completely different. Otherwise, you need to change your teams every 6 months. It doesn't make any sense. So indeed, to me, I think it's where the momentum is the good one, and the moment is obviously the AI teams like us, it's our job. So every 2 days we're reading new papers, being up to speed onto what is coming and what's the hype in AI. Sometimes internally we do mistake on, like, okay, that was not a good choice. Let's move on. But I think it's less impactful on us as being an AI-focused company, because that's our job and that's what we do the best. And I think that's where we actually can bring value to the pharma company, because it's safer for them to partner with us rather than for them to have to change the full AI spectrum within the company.
Well, I'm going to actually send it back to Christian, because you have a team of 60 of AI data scientists. How are you working with the very much chaotic landscape?
Yeah. So I know we're pharma and thought of to be slow sometimes, but I do want to push back a little bit. I think on the AI side of things, obviously we have teams, my team, but also across Novartis, who keep up with the developments. But I think what we critically realize is indeed methods change rapidly, right? And tech stacks change rapidly. We still need to build on that, and we also continue to do so. I think we realize being agile in this space, even for a big pharma company, I think is really important. So we do have innovation teams that are really on the forefront, and we have people that really work on the drug projects themselves, and we don't expect them to, change. Of course. So we do have that group of people. I think what for us is really important is to show from a partner side of things what the key contribution is that we really cannot bring internally. And if you look at, say, public development of AI methods is going super rapidly, right? And those are, even though it's hard to keep up, they are internalizable. The models themselves are a really hard space for an external company to differentiate themselves, right? Because you can already see it, that the mega arms race between the very big AI companies, right? They bring out model after model, but the true differentiation is in the details. So I think the value proposition for someone, for us to partner with, is not just purely on the technical model, even though they may have a super capable and highly technical AI team. I think it's also the combination of the value proposition with the data that they bring, with potentially the connections that they have to generate that data, and the ability to execute on it rapidly, right? Because what you're saying, I think, is true, especially again in that second step after you've identified or applied the model, what's next, right? So how can you scale? How can you go rapidly? And if you have 20 things to choose out from which you have to scale, then indeed it's better to place the risk with an external partner rather than set up 20 things yourself, right? So I think it's a nuanced discussion in that space, but I do think that there should be more than just the AI competency that a partner brings to the table. thankfully, there are many good partners out there that bring much more than that. So I think that's certainly the reason why we're still partnering.
So, Abdullah, on that side, I'm going to actually talk to you about the AI and database, because your bottleneck for academia is access to data.
Absolutely.
And public data, pharmaceutical data across countries' borders. How are you looking into what would be the best partnership for you to have the right data, so when the people come and they have the fantastic AI team, they do also have access to the right data, they have the right technical background to use it. So it would be relevant for either Okin or Novartis.
I mean, no, it's really true, especially in drug discovery. I mean, or drug development in general. Let me say this way. I mean, in biology, at least, when bioinformatics, let's say this way. So bioinformatics versus chemoinformatics. In bioinformatics, we managed to make almost all data, available. I mean, all relevant data, at least publicly available. Most of the databases are open source and so on. And actually, AlphaFold and DeepMind used this advantage basically for the, AlphaFold development, because the PDB, UniProt, and so on, the DNA databases, they are all publicly available, and there's no restriction. With drug development, it's slightly different because there's money basically behind it. So many times, it's behind paywalls, and then also not available. Basically, the pharma companies are reluctant, or at least not as open as the biology community, basically to share that data. But the AlphaFold example shows very nicely what is possible if really making money is just the second important point, and it's really just about science. Then things like AlphaFold happen, and I would wish that also pharma companies. I know that there are initiatives and so on where pharma companies are talking to each other and where you make the data available. But I think nevertheless there's still some way to go, and especially as you mentioned also with the negative results and so on. This would be really. I mean, this would be kind of, I guess, also quite a game changer if we can get to that point. And again, like the bioinformatics field with all the databases that are also structured in a sense. So, it's not just, plain text databases, but most of the databases are structured, so you can really, they are like computer friendly, let's say this way, and AI friendly. So, to go along this path, I mean, it will happen, I guess, sooner or later, at the level that the biology databases have shown. But this definitely, I mean, something that I would like to see in the future as well, for our developments for sure. And I mean, because as an academic lab, we don't have. I mean, usually wherever there's some money involved, we don't access basically these data sources. And that's a little bit unfortunate. But that's how it is.
And on that note, do you see the way that we think about academia in this field changing in coming years, given the fact that the technical expertise is becoming the secondary point?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the academia is quite flexible, so we will adapt. So if there is, more technical, I mean, so the academic field is so broad. You have technical expertise. You have people who are more interested in technical developments. You have people more interested in applications and so on. And then some are more interested in really pure basic research. Others are more interested in applied research. And so I think the academia field will adopt. That should not be really a big problem. It's like if you need more technical, technical expertise, so we will adapt. But maybe here the question is rather, how do we get access to more, technical experts? And there is obviously, our side. We have to develop educational programs. So we have to, the classical always, we have to get more people interested in computer science or being able, to code. And actually nowadays, coding starts already at school level and so on. I guess at one point, it will be we will talk about not maybe developing AI models, but at least handling and using AI models, that this was also like educated very early on at the school level and then also later at the university level. And this is definitely something, you know, where the academic field and the educational field, the university field, has to adapt and has to develop new curricula. When we are, for our university, for example, we have adapted the various study programs, and at least, you know, for all the students who are interested in AI, in machine learning, in data science, and so on, they can attend courses. And I'm 100% sure that this is also true with other universities. But then again, maybe we should go a little bit beyond and really teach, basically, you know, many more people, so the handling and using computers, including like some programming, AI usage, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so this is basically, at least, you know, to a certain extent, this is what we are trying to do.
So for the next one, I want to focus on ethics, bias, and representation. So what is missing is the element of patient screening and diagnostic upfront in the population. The therapies would be of limited use if the right patient with abnormal characteristic is not defined in the first place. So Elodie, in your biomarker work, diagnostic work, what have you changed to improve representation to reduce bias?
I think it goes back to also the validation. And that's where, indeed, that's, if you go into the diagnostic field, obviously, and thank God for that, the regulatory, they ask you to have a lot of validation of the tools. And indeed, one of the big pieces of the regulation and the validation is to have at least 4 or 5 external cohorts from the one that you build your model on to prove that indeed you have less bias as possible in terms of ethics in the data set and so in your product. And so that's how you build the diagnostic tools, and also you're supposed to make sure that your model doesn't become obsolete. Because you have new genomics data that came in or new changes into the decision making and the knowledge to make sure that your models are up to speed. And indeed, to people at Oaken, it's really crucial, and because we know by design the way you get your data, so the way you're going to train the model, is going to be super impactful on the development of your model. I can cite, it's something that we've learned at Oaken, and it's always make me laugh, because I think it's a good way of understanding clearly the problem of ethics in AI. We have a professor that is always giving us lecture on AI and ethics, and she was taking the example of during the COVID period, her team developed a model that was trying to predict based on the clinical data, which patient will be at risk of going to the ICU based on COVID. And then at some point she was like, one of the features that came out of the model when she dig was a small code from the ER, which I don't remember, I think it was GP or GR, whatever. And it was a mistake of the AI model labeling that when GR is for people that are, it's a mistake between being a male and being pregnant was of higher risk for you to go to the ICU. Just because it was, I think, a knee problem versus being pregnant. And so the typo, similar things, yeah. And so the typo into the clinical data that were put into the model gave actually that one of the risks to go to the ER and be affected by COVID being pregnant men. And to me, it's something that I always take as an example, because obviously she did that on purpose to show the ethics and making sure that you need to really go into the details of your data to make sure that the ethics is good. But okay, this example is easy because we know men can be pregnant. So okay, easy example for the ethics. But you can imagine that obviously the more complex the data that are going to be, the more labels are going to be complex, the harder it is for the human mind to pick actually this kind of example. Again, I'm taking this one because it's a funny one and an easy one to remember. But obviously, when you think of ethics in AI, this is really crucial. So that's why we impose a lot on a lot of validation cohort with as much as possible diversity. But obviously, even us as a company, we're based in France, and most of the data we have is European/US.
Yes.
So, okay, we know that we have a huge bias into ethics because we have few centers in Asia, but it's really limited. So, of course, we don't cover the entirety of the world. And I'm just even if you think about it, there is a lot of studies that demonstrate, even if you go to the hospital, already just having data from an hospital, it means that you don't reach the entirety of the population, because not the entirety of the population is going to the hospital. So indeed, to me, it's something that, okay, you can act upon it. There is a level of complexity that you can't pass, but being aware of it and really pay attention to it once you're developing AI model is really crucial, in my opinion.
There's another considerations in India if the drug that you are proposing for patent and clinical trials was primarily designed by AI will not be accepted. So that not that India will not catch up with the rest of the world, but basically closing the doors when it comes to the regulations on how you're gonna not run your clinical trials through a billion of the people populations that you could potentially have data. So yeah, absolutely. There's if the clinical trials are run in Europe and US and North America, that's where data comes in. So I want to move to Christian on this note and follow on the same theme that we need to generalize to a scale. That is the reality of the drug discovery. However, do you right now constitute bias checks as part of the large organization like Novartis?
So I think everyone who works with models and AI is aware of it. I haven't heard the pregnancy in male one yet, but obviously everyone's aware of the biases that are more well known around resume checking for software engineers and those kind of things. So I think whenever you work with models, whether it's in a biotech or pharma company or elsewhere, I think you have to be aware of this bias. I think that that means that indeed whenever you evaluate or build models and have validation data, etc., you need to be very aware and check for biases. That's part of it's part of the development workflow. But I do agree, that you are limited by where you get data, right? If you build models like we do on, say, clinical trial data, real-world evidence data, those are not available for the broader population by per se. That's already a bias filter that you go through. And I think the fact of the matter is that there's a big flux in the world, right? So a lot more clinical data is being generated in countries like China, for example, and Japan has has a lot of regulations around clinical trials in their population, but they also have a very forward-looking health authority. So it is in our best interest to do as good of a job as we can, and we are, again, as an organization, very much aware of these. But you're always limited by the input that you get, and that means that you have to design your validation really well, and also be on the lookout for ways to remove bias by proactively, setting up collaborations in the right geographies, sourcing samples from non-standard locations. All those things, I think, are in scope.
So Abdullah, I'm going to actually switch to you on that side as well. You did mention the point of efficacy of the drugs and the ethical obligations that we have to ensure the drugs that are on the market help more than 30-40% of the targeted. So how are you thinking about the ethical part, what we owe to society?
I mean, it was already raised. I think so there will always be bias, and the most important thing is just that we are aware of it, and that we are, that we can act upon it, so that we can maybe adjust kind of, the predictions that we would do with these models, so that we know, which predictions are more reliable, which are less reliable in a certain context. And you know, so for sure, you know, like if you have, for example, a cancer drug, if you get a good response in like 30% or 40% of patients, a targeted therapy, this is already like a very good, you know, like a very good drug, for example. But you know, like the remaining 60-70% don't respond. And here, like ethically, obviously, you know, it would be really good if we would have biomarkers that would prohibit or that would avoid the usage of the drugs only 70-60%, because those treatments basically, you know, steal time from the patient, because the patient is now under therapy that is not, you know, like not the right therapy, and then the patient will be on this drug for like 2-3 months or so. And if you would have used another drug, you know, maybe she would have responded, and you basically, you know, just lose lifetime basically of the patient. So having biomarkers would be, you know, would really help, or like having better biomarkers than the ones that we currently have would really like make a huge difference also in the way, you know, how we treat patients. And then obviously, you know, one you know, although, you know, there are racial differences basically how, you know, drugs work, but even, you know, like on women, you know, so most of the clinical trials are done on men. So we have basically, from the data point of view, you know, we have less data on women. And I think, you know, even the response rate, I don't know it now by heart, but the response rate, I could imagine, is even much lower on women than on men, for example. And this is something, you know, it's really interesting that we, you know, still are not at that level yet, where we can really, you know, have data on both genders, basically, where we can then really estimate the response to, you know, of a drug, for example, in a female as well as in a man. So yeah, and then there is, you know, I guess many more also biases that need to be taken into account. But I think that the nice thing is that we're aware of these problems, and we have to counteract now. And what I would really hope is, you know, that again, that we get just simply better biomarkers, that we know, you know, under which circumstances a drug would work, especially in oncology, because there, you know, the time is very limited, basically, and the disease can spread very fast. So, you know, having just better biomarkers for decision making, this would really make a huge change in, you know, in the way how we treat patients. That would be really awesome.
Perfect. I'm going to ask a few questions that you have kindly shared. So this is for you, Elodie. If you could define a self-imposed gold standard for responsible AI, what would you put? What is our gold standard for responsible AI for drug discovery?
That's a good question. I would say, well, I guess we already covered a lot of it. Like something that's, okay, we'll have bias, but we're aware of them. We indeed are using the right data, because I think it's something we touched upon and I can't agree more. Meaning like, okay, yes, trying to reuse from the past is often a not so good idea. Because there is a lot of new things, crap, noise.
Garbage
so,
in, garbage
yeah.
out, yes.
Validation, and I'll add more validation to it, because I think it's what is needed. And maybe, to me, one thing that I hear a lot, and it's in complete opposite of my vision, is, you know, people are always afraid of like AI replacing them. I don't believe in that a second. Why is that? It's because, to me, the gold standard that AI is really, it should help an expert do a better job. Period. It's not here to replace anyone. It's just here, as you have, as a biologist, we have hundreds of tools. It's, to me, it's another one, which I hope it's pretty smart, but it's just another tool. So to me, that's, I'm not sure it's a gold standard, but it's something that, it's a rule that I think applies a lot, is, okay, AI if you do everything that I said above, is here to actually make you think a bit different, and is a tool in your list of tools, and definitely it can't be seen as standalone.
Absolutely. We are diverging from multi-omics, Christian, on this question. To what extent have AI tools replaced preclinical assays in the preclinical drug discovery right now?
I think that's also a very relevant question. So I very much subscribe to what you just said, right? I think replacement is maybe not the right word. I think it really is about changing the way of working. And I think it's not just about drug discovery, right? I think it's pretty clear, and I think this is also echoed in many organizations, that we should look for practical places where AI can actually enhance our work, right? Going from written sheets, accounting to Microsoft Excel, or, there are ways of working that I think are changing dramatically, even though, a lot of the tools aren't there yet, but you can see the connectivity increasing, you can see how things go. Now, the same thing goes for preclinical assays, right? If you think about assays as done, in this in this space of high, in-depth biology and really teasing apart things, which takes a long time. I think if you think about preclinical assays complementing that process, because I think the whole deep mechanistic biology isn't going to go away right away. I think there is still a huge value in really diving deep into a mechanism of action, really understanding the factors, the places where it works. But complementing that should be a new way of thinking where you have high throughput assays, that are automated, that really are optimized to feed specific models that can iterate on them and really improve them. And if again, coming back to, say, molecule generation, I've seen my experiences, for example, with biologics optimization, ways in which you can optimize antibody binders and others in a way with AI in the loop, using the right assays with the right readouts. It goes much faster, it's much cheaper, you get a higher hit rate, and you can control for many more variables, right? I think that's just one example of where I think there's immediate value, and over the long term, I think we can think about, a lot more of those setups that would leverage this, right? But then it'd be the same people running those complicated loops, setting up the assays, onboarding them onto the machines, and making sure that the readout makes sense to validate. I'm not going to send off a letter to my lawyer that ChatGPT wrote without checking it, right? So I think there are a lot of things there. It's just a way of thinking differently about the way you work.
Just to agree on this, I think to me that's often my reality check, right? It's in the end of the day, indeed, when we go to drug discovery and AI, in the end, yes, what we need is still an assay in the lab that at the moment there is no AI which is going to replace. And to me, it's kind of like I'm facing this being like, and I need a biochemistry assay that I'm going to be the one developing and not an AI tool.
Not an AI tool, yes. So we only have 5 minutes left. Thank you so much, everybody, for sending the questions. We are going to do something with them later. So I want to end the sessions by saying thank you and ask you 2 quick fire rounds questions. It feels that the field is energized. There are opportunities, there are options, there are different ways of thinking and looking, and there are people who are working hard on a different ways of thinking, and the field opening up to Oaking and similar startups in silico medicine, isomorphic labs, benevolent AI, means that the future is coming sooner than we think. So on that note, I'm going to talk about the next 12 to 24 months. Where do you hope and where do you see the changes happening in AI drug discovery and multi-omics? Earlier stage, later, stopping, deciding when to continue phase 1, 2, 3, or nope, we're going to have a harder stop here. So I'm going to start from Christian on that side.
Yeah, so
that's and the wish.
Quick fire questions, right? So I think the field is definitely energized. I think definitely don't discount big pharma, right? We are rapidly we have excellent AI people, and there's lots of examples out there. Lilly setting up this $1 billion compute cluster. We have resources, and we're willing to execute if it makes sense. And I think that's what is happening. So at least in the next 12 to 24 months, I can see, rapid ramping up of in-housing, enabling models, making sure that we get this preclinical stuff, pilot and test. That kind of way of working is definitely changing. And on the translational side, I think there too, right, thinking about trials, because it's not just that there's a lot of excitement and energy, and I think we're really seeing practical value. There's also a huge amount to be gained if we can bring medicines to patients like twice as fast, or enroll much less patients in that really tough early stage of clinical development, and really have more probability to succeed. Obviously, any tool that is out there will be of great value to us and to patients.
Absolutely, thank you. Abdullah?
I think the biggest impact we'll have these large language models, and any text-based in the hospital at least. So I think for decision making using AI for predicting the best therapy, I think we are a bit further away from this. But for sure, what is right now, like in development, is anything that is related to summarizing text, summarizing reports. You have like diagnostic reports of, if we talk about again in oncology, for a cancer patient, you have at least 30, 40 different reports, and then summarizing all of them and so on, and getting, extracting the knowledge basically from these reports without, losing information in between and so on. So this is definitely something that will it's under development and will impact quite a lot, how work is done at the hospital. Plus, also, that usually doctors are dictating their report or the text and the diagnostics and so on. And this also, again, everything that is related to language recognition, texts, text understanding, and so on. So this will have immediate large impact, and I hope within 2 years that we will be so far that these things can be really automated, so that doctors don't waste time dictating the diagnostic report, but actually this is all mostly done using AI. Or what means dictating, but that they don't need to write it down at least, with the keyboard or so. Don't need a secretary and assistant basically to do this. So these are things that will be hopefully, available within the next 24 months. And I hope, with the NIPO project that we are developing, we will also contribute to this. But at the same time, also, we will look definitely into, therapy decisions. Predicting therapy decisions, but one of the very first goals is really to get these unstructured text data in the hospital organized, and AI can really help here. And everyone uses ChatGPT and so on, so already how powerful these AI models are in understanding text, and hopefully in hospitals we will be able to exploit this technology.
2 years for Switzerland, sure.
Yep.
So I agree on the clinician side. I think it's going to help them accelerate their tool. I'm going to be a bit less optimistic of the three, I guess. I don't think for patients outside of clinical trial that in the 2 years to come, patients will see anything from AI. They will not see their clinician taking faster notes. They will not see AI calming drugs. And they will not see the hype for the next 2 years. I might be, let's do again 2 years, see if I was wrong or right. Because I didn't predict that 7 years ago I'm going to be here, so let's see. That's on the patient journey. Why I think that, it's because I think it's too early. The ball is rolling, but I think for the patient, for them to see an impact on their daily life, I'm pretty negative, but again, maybe I'm wrong. And then to me, how we're going to see an impact is indeed more on the fact that now AI is not, it was not reserved, but understood by a happy few that were part of the bubble. And early adopters, if you want to be an adopter, but more, okay, people know that their jobs and their life is going to be impacted by AI. And I think this is the beginning of like having more people thinking about it. And so that's where I think indeed there will be more adoption, and I think it will accelerate the impact it has on the drug development, even if it's IND filing and regulatory, because instead of taking 48 days to fill your IND, it's going to be 7 weeks. Okay, say 7 days or whatever. This I'm 7 minutes, 7 seconds. So this, I really believe that's going to change, because you already have ChatGPT, like not my lawyers, but many of my emails are being checked by ChatGPT. So here, yes, I think it's going to accelerate a lot on the drug development and the human lab in the loop. I really believe that everyone is ready. The labs are getting automated. I mean, they are automated. There is already high throughput. People are knowing that, yes, you can have a funnel of 100 new targets coming from AI that you need to validate. So to me, indeed, this is where we're going to see a lot of the acceleration going from target ID to more impact of AI later down the line. Also because, as I said at the beginning, I think there is few drugs that are coming from AI that are currently in clinical trials. So finally, we will get to the 10 years past the first drugs. So the real impact. And also because we see the FDA, like there is the AI Act, so the regulatory in general are changing, and they're starting to open and being more aware of AI and the impact. So indeed, to me, this is where I see the changes.
And IB did not touch on the regulations or the discrepancy across markets, but on a positive side, pharma companies, on announcements, there's 75 drugs that are co-designed by AI currently being investigated. So the future is hopeful, it's coming, maybe not in the next 2 years, but let's see. Maybe next time we are going to be here, that's going to be a different story. So with that, I would like to say thank you to the 3 panelists, and thank you all for being here and listening, and see you outside for the apéro.
Thank you so much. I took note. So in 2 years, we need to come back and revisit if you were right or wrong. I took a good note. No, thank you so much. I know there were many questions unanswered, but I hope we can get many of them answered, either from the panelists, from some of the startup companies we have here, or just among the audience. Just so many of you come from this field and experts in each of the things you do. So before we go to the apéro, usually we always have something here for you. So today as well, for those of you that haven't heard it yet, there's a large event called Health Tech Global Summit coming to Basel, coming to the city. It's in 3 weeks, March 3rd to 5th. And as day one, we are a partner of the event. We are powering the startup competition, and we are glad to offer you a discount code, both the on-site people, the online people. If you want to join the event, please use the code you see on the screen. But on top of that, every time, those regulars, every time I ask you, please give us feedback, you'll get the feedback form. But I know it's tough. I get it all the time. Booking sends me, how was your hotel? And I do the same to you. So here my incentive. We are going to give away 3 free tickets, 3 complimentary passes to Health.tech among all the people that fill out the feedback form, because we actually like to learn from you and adjust and bring the topics that you like. So please help us improve, help us continue, gives us feedback. And I'll hand to Rahel.
That's my cue. Thanks a lot to the speakers. It was a very engaging discussion. I like to follow it. I would like to mention, as usual, if you have a health tech startup, if you know a health tech startup looking for workspace, reach out to me. We have a really nice space on the Novartis campus.
And I'm gonna close with a save the date. So Next open mic, it's gonna be May 11th. We are gonna announce the topic very, very soon. I can already tell you it's gonna be exciting. That's as much as I can disclose for now, but you can already save the date. If you are not yet registered onto our newsletter or don't follow us on LinkedIn, do it now so we can inform you when we open, because many might have realized this event sold out fast. So please register so you're informed on time. And I know I'm what is standing between you and a glass of wine, so I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna let you all enjoy the apero and keep the questions there. Thank you very much.